this is the template from the last one. I'm just going to see if I can adapt it to fit this one. So I've got a little bit to play with there. Something like that. You see that line? The light coming through there. It's not always easy to see, but no room to get a better view, really, I'm afraid. I'll snip that out, following that line. Ain't bad. The only thing different is the top needs to be higher up there. Shortened it. It's basically need to bring that up to there, I think. So it's that much too short, roughly, across the top. So we can draw that on here and square that up. That should be fine. So something like that. So once I cut this out, it's going to be on the inside edge of this line. It's quite a thick line. Okay, that top section, so it carries up to the top. So just draw that bit in there. So there we go. So that's what we're going to cut out. That little top section for passing wiring through and stuff. I just need to get that cut out now. And typical fashion, our weather's changed and it started raining. So all I've done with that is put my finger on the side of the hull, put the pen there and just run it down so that it left the line following the side of the hull onto the cardboard. I've just got the second one in. I want to get this cut out and get that done. And if I've got time, I'm going to get the second one cut in, stuck in. But I've got to go get the kids from school, so cutting it fine. Right, I'm going to crack on. I've cut this out. I need to take my grind at the back of it because it's not flat. So I just need to shake this down a little bit. Probably leave it fatter at the back because of the taper where the two halves come together. Thinner at the front. So I need it to be square down that front section, not rocking like that. Then we can get this one stuck in here, like so. Let's take a bit off of that. It's not quite tucking in all the way at the front there. Like I say, this is 6mm at the bottom and 3 at the top. 2 right at the very top. So I need to square that up a little bit first, and then we'll try that in there again and see if I just need to trim any off the end of that other locker. See that? I've made it so it's roughly the same thickness top to bottom on the front, and I've tapered it down towards the back edge there, so that's slightly wider. As we know, them two halves will come together, leaving a gap at the back, so that will take up some of that. That fits nicely. Pleased with that. It's protruding slightly on that front edge there. That's perfect, because I can butt these two up, and then when that's set in place I can run the grinder down there, take that out, and that will leave that perfectly flush then. See how that sits. Remove that top corner. So take a bit off of that corner. I can always, once I've removed it, I can fill it with paste and glass it back in place. Alright, so I've just taken that corner off. I've left it slightly proud of what I marked. I can always take a bit more off, but it's much harder to put it back on. Not impossible, but it is harder. That's better. Right. So it's only once you've got the rest fixed in that you get your first proper look at how it's actually going to fit. So I need to leave a little gap at the top here. It's a little bit short. I don't want to have to filler it up to make that up. There's quite a gap at the back under there, I feel. Up to there. This is where the fine adjustments come into play. Just tweaking until you get it right. Remove a little bit down to there. It's about to take time.
might make the difference between me having time to bond this in place or not. That in, that in, that in. Sits a bit better there. It's a lot closer, that's better. Much better. Right. What we need to do is tweak the bottom of this, I think. Got too much sticking out the bottom, and once this is in place, I can shave the front, but I can't get to the bottom very easily. So I've got a little bit too much overhang on the bottom. And nobody likes overhang on the bottom. Right, let's get that in place. So it's tight where it needs to go. Like that along there. See, I've got to take that off. It's not a lot, but it's enough that it's going to stick out. And when if you're laying down there, looking up there, you've got this big bit sticking out there. No, not having that. So, in place there. That's better. Now it's more flush along that bottom edge. I'm not worried about the front sticking out. I can get to that. But the bit underneath, I won't be able to get my grinder into there to flush it off. You know, if these don't marry, I can build that up and I can level that across with a bit of glass and filler. But it'll be very hard to get into the bottom of there once that's stuck in place with a grinder. So that's good. There's not much gap at the bottom. I left that wedge shape to fill that. There's not much gap there. So that looks good. But they're roughly in line along the bottom. I don't want a big step. Yeah, the more out it is, the more I've got to fill and mess around afterwards. So I want it to look straight underneath, you know, nice and smooth. Not like it doesn't belong, you know. So the fronts need to be roughly level and the bottom needs to be level and stuck in place. Right, I'm happy with that. Let's get some acetone, clean this lot up and start sticking that in place. Right, this has all been acetoned already. Up here, I'm just going to give it have a little wipe. Just clean everything off. Now we need some mixy put. Acetone is stinky Rooney. Oh, and that's got to go in the top of there as well, isn't it? I ain't cut that down. Yes, that's where we're coming to. That there. Straight line across that. God, it's hot in here. Sweating. Oh, that's going to go up there, leaving me that. Out if I snip them corners. My shears to cut this is really thin glass. Cuts quite easy with the shears. Just keep on the back edge so I don't bend them up. I've just taken the ends off to try and let this come up a little bit more in the middle. I prefer the thicker glass, but I've got none left at the moment. It's all this tweaking that really takes time. All I want this to do is fill this gap in the back here. Give the filler something to stick to. Like so. If I put my bonding paste in there, then lay that strip in, push that down, use that to bridge that. Again, I've got to cut the ends. Yes, just the final fittings, guys. The better I can get it now, the easier it'll make my life later. All I can do is make the shape of that boat there. That's not bad, that's better. Much better, 100%. That's a lot better. Right, now that fits in there. I ain't got such a big gap to bridge at the back now. So I can get that in. Stick that in place. Put that in place. Line that up there. Squeeze that back there. That fills that. Bonding paste over the lot. Fiberglass it all in. Yeah, that fills the hole at the back. Beautiful. Says Bernard. The only thing I am concerned about is this top strip. I might not use that. I might wait till I make some more glass and then stick it in after. I think this is a bit too thin, and what I'm worried about is if I fix that in place, one, it's going to ripple when I try to squeeze that on to here flat, because it's got no stiffness. I'm going to get rippling, so that means it's not going to sit flat for the door to shut against. And two, it could, after time with that hinge snapping shut on it, it could start to move that, bend it, crack it. You know, it's very, very thin and flexible. I could stiffen that up with some more glass, but I haven't done it yet. I think I'm going to leave that out and stick it in after. That's long enough. That's probably what I kept it for. Out of the way, but that's, again, I need to get this stuck in now, and I'm running out of time. I've got to start messing around trimming this down now. Got to be better, isn't it? That's the way to go. Sorry guys. More cutting to do. Messing around. That's that cut out. So that's going to go into the top of there. Hopefully that'll fit nicely in there. Made it a little bit deeper there, but that still bridges the gap most of it anyway. Right. Nice dry fitting. That in there. Level. That in there. Once this is stuck in, it'll be a lot easier. That ain't keep dropping out. Just getting this to stay in place. It's very hard to hold everything in place. Dry fitting. You've got so many little bits to hold. Well, that ain't bad. Right, need to start getting that stuck in. Some on the back. It's a lot thicker the back of this one, so that'll give it more to stick to. Some on the inside edge to stick to that locker that's there. I'll need some on the outside edge for the next locker, but I'll do that afterwards. I'm sticking this round the inside edge at the moment. Got a fair bit on there so that it squidges out nicely, gives me plenty to work with. I don't want too much, you know, in the way of gap. Once it's in there, it needs to squidge up tight because it's a good fit. I'm not trying to take up the gap with the case. I want it tight against that and squidge most of it out. That's in there, wedged up against that one. Hoping that will stay up there as is. So it's slightly proud at the front. At the bottom bit here, this bit's flush, this bit's sticking out a little bit. Ideally perfect would be better, but like I say, I can grind it down to suit. Once it's all stuck in place and everything's fixed in, then I will be grinding both surfaces level with each other. Now they'll be perfect with each other then. There's a nice amount of squidge out in there. Run that round with my finger. Bit there sticking out, that's better. Smoothing out. So once this is all fixed in and glassed in place, they ain't going anywhere. It'll hold itself in place. I'll build a little edge up along this bottom here and tab this rear section on. And it wants to be thin. I'm not looking for any build up. I'm looking for gluing the part on, basically. So this is literally from the extender. A bit like when you make a template and you stick it on, and you want to fill the gap. I'll set that gap on that bottom bit. That way I want it. Push that out to the side of the boat. Making the moulded parts slightly bigger across the bottom there. Squeeze that down tight. Right, so what we've done is I've extended the bottom lip there to fit a bit more perfectly. So when that goes in there, it's more in the right place, That's better. Right. Now we need some build up on there. Get that top bit on for the door shut. I'm going to stick this on the top now, and we'll get it all in, glued up the top. Right, one side's tapered, that's that way. It's going to go on there. Right, hold that in place, set the gap. Whew, there's a lot of stuff to balance and hold, I'll tell you. Right, without knocking anything, I've got to get that in place. Push that up to where it's got to go. Set the gap on there so it's touching the top, and then squidge it tight together. Squidging out the excess so it stays in the right place. That's it, so squeeze these two halves together, squidging out all that excess. Nice and tight. I want it loose. Stick it back in gently, trying to knock that bottom one out of place. And then just reset the gap in case we've moved at all, which is bound to. I've squeezed it, it will flip about a bit. Right, there we go, so that's pretty much there. So before that lot starts going off, we've got to knock on some more paste, get that lot globbed on. So I'm just going to build up this top layer. Balancing that on top. There's a big old gap with that top section. And like I've done on the last one, see this will start going off soon, so it will start going more grey. You can see it's starting to grey up a lot more now. So as it does that, it will become more tacky, which will hold this up almost like instant grab. I don't want it going off just yet, but the thicker you make this stuff, the more heat it will give off, the faster it will go off. Exothermic reaction. So the more I put on, the faster it goes off, and eventually it'll get to a point where that will kick off and it will just be too late to do anything else with. Right, so that is on. I've definitely not got enough here to stick this in with. I need to add a little bit in the front, but I can't do that until I've got it fixed in place. So we'll get this on. What I'm doing now is I'm covering the end in paste, but I'm leaving a good bead along the top there, and that will be the bit that I'll put my finger in and wipe it down, radius in that corner. So there you go, so I've got a nice build up in there. You don't actually get much on the actual end, and there's going to squeeze up and squeeze most of that out anyway. I do want a bit on the end to squeeze out. And that'll be fine. Right, there we go. I'm not going to put any on this end just yet. Oh, I could be on that bit. This bottom I know doesn't touch, so I'll put some on this end. But I know that's going to need bridging with a little bit of magic, that is, a little bit of glass in there to bridge that end off. Right, that's it. The problem I've got now also is I've got to put this down without that lot sticking to everything. Alright. Take that off for a second. I need to mix up some more to do this bottom edge where it sticks onto the boat. I've got to put this down carefully. So let's lower that down onto there so it don't stick to nothing. I'll leave that sitting on me filler board there so that the edges ain't touching anything. Maybe enough to lob in along that bottom edge. I'm not double dipping that. Something started setting a bit of this off at the top. It hasn't gone through the whole lot, so I mean the rest of it's still alright, but I don't want to ruin it. I've used most of it now, but not all of it. There's still quite a fair bit in there. 50 quid tub of paste. There's probably about 20 quid's worth left. It looked like I had the lid quite back on. There's a bit that has dried around the top, letting the air in, and it started sort of setting up a little bit, or drying out anyway. It might have got a little bit of catalysed stuff in there. Maybe I double dipped the spreader, put a tiny bit in there. Who knows? It ain't set it all off, but let's be careful with it. What I started doing was recording in 10-minute intervals. Makes it easier to sort of work through and delete sections that you don't want. But I can't do that whilst I'm doing this lot. It's too messy, too much stopy-starty. And I'm trying to sort of get my work done. And I don't want to spend too much time messing about trying to film it. You know, I want to be just filming what I'm doing rather than all the emphasis on the filming and not actually getting anything done. Because what starts happening is you start getting more involved in the filming than actually doing the work that I need done. I mean, boat's going to take for blooming ever to get finished. I'll work this along that top line, right in the corner. So this is just getting the filler up there, squidge it in so it sits into that corner, and when I put this in place I'll have some either side of the unit. It'll squidge out either side, and then I'll swipe the thingy through it to radius it off. Excess, don't need too much up there. What I don't want to be doing is leaving big globs that I've got to sand. The thicker it is I've got to sand through, the more work I've got. This stuff's quite thick, it's quite hard to sand. It's quite a task. And I'm going to put a bit more on here. Gently, not knocking that glass strip that I've put on, but I want to sort of fill this back edge to fill that up to level. So I've got plenty on there already that's got to squidge out. I just want to do this first so that I've got no air gaps there before I start. Right, we're starting to grey up on that top section now, so I need to get this on ASAP before that starts setting at all. Once it starts setting, I'm scuppered. I really am. That'll be it. That'll be knackered. We'll be letting it set up to grind off and start again. I don't want to push this back too far this side, because it's a little bit small, so it will go in too far. I want it to be level with the other one. Would have been easy to do had this been flush as well, as I said before, but I can manage. It's not too bad. And once I grind it all out and glass it, you won't notice that anyway. What I don't want is to look along the bottom and they're all different angles up. That's got to go right up into there, tight at the front. Then I can get this end up where I want it. And this is the bit it's holding it in place till it dries then, and keeping it there because this keeps dropping out now. It's not as dry as the other lot, it's not as sticky. Oh, excuse me, back to you for a second. I need to get this into place and squidge out the filler. There we go. Right. That's it. On that top. Right down there. There we go. All that excess out. Right, it's starting to go tacky. It ain't quite dry yet. Bottom's tighter radius to get into. As the V of the boat's changed, it's a lot tighter up the front here to get my hands into. Off what I can. Once this dries, you know, I'll have to get in there to sand it, which is going to be very difficult. So I want this shaped how I need it before it dries, basically. Big gap at the bottom, at the front now. A little bridging piece that is. I'm nigh out of stuff to wet in there. I've got a little bit of excess hanging out inside that I can stick it in. Something like that. Right, let's just make sure that's covered. So it's the best chance of sticking. I've smeared that over the bottom. So hopefully there's enough in there to stick that in place anyway, but it's got a smear on the bottom to help it on its way. Excuse me, going in. Come on. Slide in here. That's it. There we go. Stay in place. Something in there, just to hold that. Pressure on it, I just want it to hold it in place so it can't move. I don't want to come back and it's dropped. level on the back there. Right, it's starting to go off a bit more now. It should start holding in place. Yeah, it's not dropping now. Starting to go off now, so it's getting firmer all the time, less movable, you know. It should stop floating around and we're good for time. Just tweak it just to make sure it goes off in the right place. I need a little bit more filler in there and a little bit along the top, which if I can do while this is still wet will save me having to come back next time and sand it before I can do it. And what I don't want to do is put pressure on the box and start pulling it down again. It's going to mess up all the joints that are holding it in place at the moment. Once you start stretching it apart, you sort of lose some of the bonds that it's got. At the moment it's looking good. I'm going to let it set for a little bit, and then whilst it's still wet, not wet but wet enough that it hasn't gone off, I'm just going to mix up a little bit more to squidge in these gaps that are left. The bits on here I'll probably have to put a bit of filler in. A bit of this bonding paste will have to go in there, sand that smooth, and then I'll glass the actual door. I probably should have just done all this while I had them out, got them all fitting nicely and everything else, but I just wanted to get them in. I was getting in place. I want to see them in place. It's another step closer to being finished then, you know. While they're still sitting on the side and I'm working on them, making them look perfect, then I'm going to mess them up once I've put them in place like I've done. They're all covered in glue now, or bonding place. That's all got to be sanded again. Then it's got to be fiberglassed, then it's got to be sanded, and you know, then it's got to be faired in for its final fairing, all without getting any overspill in that lip where that door's going to shut. Yeah, it's holding in place now. Minimal droppage there. You got a lot of half-a-mil movement if you push on it. I can push it up a little more, but it's not a lot. Gives me a tiny little squidge at the top, but not a lot. Just hold it in place gently. Right, that ain't gonna work. So the more you push on it, you sort of twist it out of line. I'm trying to keep it in line with the one in front. It sort of keep one end up but the other end down. Yeah, it's all very good. That's sort of unpushable really. I can't keep the pressure on this end. I've got no way of sort of wedging it in there without it sort of just wanting to push itself out again. To stop it dropping. It can't drop any more than it is, but sweat in here. Yeah, so there's a little more build up in that top and a little bit down that front. Not a lot, tiny bit really. Oh, it's nice to see all three in though. Oh, I'm pleased with that today. That's what I wanted to get done. I've done it. There you go. 3 lockers in place. Hey! I think they'll look alright once they're done.